What if the school bully picked on the wrong girl and ended up bringing his whole world crashing down? She didn't fight back with fists. She didn't yell. She just stood still and smiled, because behind her quiet eyes was a truth no one saw coming, a connection so powerful it would leave the entire school stunned. This is the story of Aria Blake, a 14-year-old girl with a past cloaked in whispers and a secret that would turn the most feared boy in school into a cautionary tale. If you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or pushed too far, this story is for you. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and don't forget to like this video, leave a comment if it reminds you of someone you knew, and subscribe to my channel for more true-to-life stories that'll keep you thinking long after they end. Let's begin. The morning sun hadn't yet burned through the Georgia haze when Aria Blake stepped off the yellow school bus. She moved with purpose, but not confidence, like someone trained to avoid attention. Her frame was small, her steps light, almost too quiet for someone her age. She didn't look left or right, didn't meet a single pair of eyes. In her faded jeans and gray canvas sneakers, Aria looked like any other 14-year-old starting fresh. But there was something off, something in the way she held herself. Guarded, controlled, like a soldier walking into enemy territory. Tucked into the inside pocket of her jacket was a small, silver voice recorder. She never touched it, never spoke of it. But she always knew exactly where it was. Kids at Crestwood Middle noticed her right away. Not because she said anything, because she didn't. They noticed the way she sat at the edge of the cafeteria with her back against the wall, the way she watched people instead of talking to them, and they especially noticed the rumors. She came from a military school in Tennessee. I heard she broke another girl's arm. My sister said she got kicked out for snapping during training drills. No one knew what was true. Aria never confirmed, never denied. She just sat, watched, listened. Her eyes, sharp and gray, seemed to scan every hallway like she was looking for something, or someone. Even the teachers didn't quite know what to make of her. She was respectful, quiet, turned in her homework on time, but there was a wall around her, emotional barbed wire that no one dared cross. Some kids found her strange. Others were intimidated without knowing why. Because when you looked long enough into Aria's eyes, you got the sense she wasn't afraid of much. And maybe that was the most unsettling part of all. She didn't try to fit in. She didn't seem to care if she did. By the end of her first week, Aria had become a ghost that everyone noticed. And while some whispered behind her back, others simply stepped aside when she walked by. They couldn't explain it, but they felt it. Something simmering just beneath the surface. Something that hadn't been revealed yet. Something that, if pushed too far, might change everything. It was second period when Aria Blake walked down the East Wing hallway toward room 204, English literature. Her schedule crinkled in her hand, slightly damp from her grip. The hallway buzzed with noise, locker doors clanging, sneakers squeaking, laughter bouncing off tiled walls. She didn't make eye contact. She didn't have to. The moment she turned the corner, she felt the shift, a lull in conversation, a subtle tightening of the space around her. Like the air itself braced for something, and then it happened. A shoulder, broad, fast, intentional, slammed into hers. The impact knocked her sideways. Her book spilled across the floor with a dull thud. A copy of Mice and Men, a composition notebook, the little silver voice recorder. Laughter followed, not loud but sharp, like someone had been waiting for the punchline. Well, well, a voice drawled. Look what wandered into my hallway. Aria looked up. He was tall, already filling out like a grown man, with sandy blonde hair and a smirk carved permanently into his face. His Letterman jacket, black and gold, the Crestwood Falcons logo on the sleeve, hung open like a badge of entitlement. Landon Pierce. Every school had one. The kind of boy who never had to wait in line, never heard the word no, never paid the price for a single cruel word. Son of the town's police chief, crown prince of Crestwood, he didn't need to raise his voice. Just standing there grinning down at her, he commanded the space. This school's not big on new kids who think silence makes them special, he said, eyeing the recorder on the ground. Aria said nothing, no fear, no flinch, just a calm, deliberate movement as she gathered her things one by one. She slid the recorder into her pocket last, then stood, brushing off her jeans. Landon stepped closer, expecting something. A reaction, a tremble, a retort. But Aria simply looked up at him, eyes steady, voice quiet. She didn't blink, didn't smile, didn't run. And in that strange, breathless moment, something flickered in Landon's eyes. Just for a second. Not fear, not yet, but confusion. Because the girl on the ground hadn't looked hurt. She hadn't looked angry. She'd looked ready. And Landon Pierce, for the first time in a long time, didn't quite know what to do next. By the final bell, the air outside Crestwood Middle hung thick with late summer humidity, the kind that settled in your shirt collar and clung to your skin. Students spilled out the front entrance in waves, talking, laughing, jostling for space like they always did. Aria moved alone, as always. Her backpack was zipped tight, the voice recorder safely tucked inside. She had made it through day one. No friends, no allies. But she had kept her head down, her pace steady. Unfortunately, someone else had noticed. From the corner of her eye, she caught the familiar silhouette leaning casually against the low brick wall near the school gate. Arms folded, one boot crossed over the other. Landon Pierce. He wasn't smiling this time. No posse behind him. No laughter. Just a smirk that didn't quite reach his eyes, like a boy who didn't get the reaction he wanted and still couldn't let it go. "Well," he called out, straightening up, "if it isn't our little mystery girl." Aria didn't stop walking. He fell into step beside her. "You know," he said, tone lighter than it felt, "most new kids at least try to act normal. You walk around here like you're planning something." She didn't answer. "You always this quiet, or just around people smarter than you?" Still no reply. Landon narrowed his eyes. He reached out, not hard, just enough to brush the strap of her backpack. Just enough to remind her, "I can get in your space anytime I want." And then it happened. The screech of tires, a deep, guttural rumble of horsepower echoed down the school driveway. Heads turned. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. A massive black SUV, matte finish, reinforced frame, tinted windows, the kind of vehicle you only saw in movies or outside embassies, swung around the corner and came to a sudden, controlled stop at the curb in front of the school. The passenger door opened. No music, no flashy entrance, just silence. Then a woman stepped out. Not just any woman. Tall, broad-shouldered, back ramrod straight, hair pulled into a flawless military bun. Dressed not in uniform, but in a crisp black blouse and tailored slacks. The kind of clothes that said, "I don't need medals to prove who I am." Every teacher in the lot straightened. A few students whispered, because even those who didn't recognize her face recognized her name. General Aria Blake, former commander of Joint Special Operations, National Security Advisor during the Delta Station terror crisis, decorated strategist, and now standing calmly on the blacktop of a middle school, eyes fixed on one person only. "Con on Chu, Aria?" Her voice was even, unshaken, but her presence filled the space like a rising tide. Aria blinked once, nodded. "Yes, ma'am." Serena turned her head, slowly, until her gaze landed on Landon Pierce. And just like that, every ounce of bravado drained from the boy's face. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Her eyes didn't narrow. She didn't raise her voice. She just looked at him, not with anger, with assessment, like a general surveying the battlefield and deciding whether a threat was worth her time. Landon's jaw clenched. He stepped back, almost unconsciously. General Blake said nothing. She didn't need to. Without another word, Aria walked to the SUV. Serena opened the door for her. Aria climbed in. The door shut with a quiet, solid thud. The engine growled as the SUV pulled away, leaving behind a parking lot full of stunned students, and one teenage boy who had, for the first time in his life, come face to face with someone who made him feel small. By the next morning, Crestwood Middle School was buzzing, not with test scores or football games, not even with the usual hallway gossip, but with one name, Aria Blake. Whispers followed her like shadows. That was her mom? You mean the Serena Blake? She's not just a general. She was on the news last year during that embassy thing. I heard she works in Washington now, something with Homeland Security. The stories weren't entirely accurate, but they didn't have to be. The mystery that once made Aria a target had now made her untouchable, or so people thought. Teachers watched her differently now, a little more cautiously, a little more kindly. Even the principal paused when she passed, offering a stiff smile like he wasn't quite sure if he should salute. And the students? Some kept their distance. Others tried to get close, not out of kindness, but curiosity. Everyone wanted to know, what's her deal? What's her story? But Landon Pierce? He wasn't impressed. He hadn't forgotten the way his feet moved backward without him meaning to, or how his voice dried up in front of that woman. That look she gave him. It had replayed in his mind all night, and that stung more than anything, because Landon was used to being in control. And now, he wasn't. So he did what insecure boys often do when they feel small. He doubled down. He watched Aria from across the cafeteria, from behind his locker door, from the library computers. Never confronting her directly. Not anymore. But waiting, searching. He started recording her with his phone when she wasn't looking. Short clips, silent moments, her alone at lunch, walking to class, sitting on the bleachers after school, sketching in her notebook. Then he got clever. He strung the clips together into a mock documentary, Life of a Weirdo Spy. He added music, something eerie and dramatic. He zoomed in on her expressionless face, slowed down the footage like she was planning something sinister. He narrated over it in a fake news anchor voice. Sources say the general's daughter is plotting her next mission at the vending machine. And then he posted it, not on school servers. He wasn't that dumb, but on a fake social media account, anonymous, fast, easy, cruel. Within hours, students were watching it on their phones between classes, chuckling, passing it along like candy. Some laughed out loud, others didn't, but the damage was done. Because Landon didn't need to shove Aria anymore. All he had to do was humiliate her. What he didn't realize, though, was that Aria had seen it. All of it. And this time, she wasn't just watching, she was waiting. Aria didn't cry. She didn't storm into the principal's office. She didn't scream in the cafeteria or post angry rants online. She just watched. And as the laughter spread across the school, hushed giggles in the hallways, sideways glances at lunch, boys nudging each other when she walked by, Aria sat still, her hands folded neatly in her lap, eyes calm. But beneath that quiet, something was shifting. Not rage, not fear, focus. She began carrying her recorder in her hand now, not in her pocket. Students thought she was paranoid. Some joked that she was trying to record ghosts. But Aria didn't care. She knew exactly what she was doing. Landon had made a mistake, not by bullying her. That was expected. That was what boys like him did. But by making it public, by turning her into a joke with an audience. And now she had one too. For the next 3 days, Aria changed nothing about her routine. She still sat alone, still ate quietly, still kept to herself. But her eyes never stopped scanning. She started catching them. The little moments no one else noticed. Landon tripping a 7th grader in the gym. One of his friends locking a shy boy in a janitor's closet. A whispered threat in the hallway, followed by a snatched backpack. She got it all. Not just audio, video. Crisp, clear, time-stamped. Aria had learned from the best. Her mother hadn't raised her to fight with fists. She'd raised her to fight with facts. Each night, Aria sat at the dining table while Serena made tea in the kitchen. They didn't talk much. They never had to. But Serena would glance over, catching the glow of Aria's laptop screen, the quiet determination in her daughter's face, and she'd smile to herself. On the 4th night, Aria opened a new browser window. She typed slowly, deliberately. anvilnay@securemail.gov. It was an email address she hadn't used since the summer before 6th grade. Back then, it had belonged to a field mentor at a youth cyber resilience camp hosted by the Anvil program, a quiet, government-adjacent initiative dedicated to monitoring cyberbullying, digital blackmail, and online harassment. Her mother had co-founded it years ago. Now, Aria attached everything: the videos, the audio files, screenshots, clips of the fake documentary, links to the anonymous profile. She added a short note. I believe this violates digital harassment protocol under Section 12 of the Federal Youth Conduct Standards. Please advise. She didn't sign her name. She didn't need to. Then she hit send. 1 week later, everything changed. It started small. Landon arrived at school, tried logging into his Instagram, error message, then Snapchat, nothing. Even his burner TikTok, the one he thought no one knew about, gone. The next day, a local news van parked outside the school. Teachers whispered in the faculty lounge. Principal Graves looked pale as paper as he huddled with the superintendent in the office. Then came the headline, Police Chief Under Fire After Son Linked to Online Harassment of Minor. Sources point to school cover-up. The article didn't name Aria, but it didn't have to. Screenshots of Landon's fake account were included. So were quotes from anonymous students who'd been harassed by his crew for months. One quote stood out, "We told the school. They didn't do anything." Landon's father, Chief Pierce, held a press conference 2 days later. He called it an unfortunate misunderstanding. The town didn't buy it. By Friday, Landon was pulled from class. His father showed up in person, red-faced and tight-lipped, guiding his son out of the building without a word. No one laughed when they passed. Aria watched from her desk near the window. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. But she did press stop on her recorder, the only sound she'd made all day. That afternoon, she sat across from her mother at the kitchen table. Serena poured tea and slid a fresh lemon wedge into her daughter's mug. "They're rattled," Serena said casually. Aria nodded. "They should be." "You want to stop here?" Aria thought for a moment, her fingers circling the rim of the mug. "No," she said finally. "They're not the only ones." Serena didn't ask who she meant, because she already knew, and Aria wasn't done yet. Friday morning arrived with more ceremony than usual. Banners hung across the Crestwood Auditorium stage in deep navy and gold. Rows of chairs lined the gymnasium floor. Parents filled the bleachers, whispering into paper programs and straightening their jackets. At the back of the room, a local news station set up a discreet camera. It was the school's annual student recognition assembly, a tradition meant to celebrate achievement, character, and community leadership. No one expected Aria Blake to be called, least of all Aria herself. She sat near the back of the gym, as always, alone. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes were alert, scanning the crowd like a soldier watching the edge of a forest. On stage, Principal Graves cleared his throat. "Today, we'd like to recognize a student who has shown remarkable courage in the face of adversity, not just for herself, but on behalf of others." The room quieted. Graves glanced at a note card, hesitated, then continued. "Aria Blake, will you please join us?" Gasps, not loud but present. A few parents looked around, confused. Students stiffened in their seats. Aria rose slowly, tucking a small black notebook under her arm. She walked down the aisle, not shy, not triumphant, just steady, controlled. When she reached the podium, Graves stepped aside. Aria looked out at the sea of faces. For a moment, she said nothing. Then she took a breath. "I didn't expect to be standing here," she began, her voice clear and steady. "But sometimes doing the right thing doesn't mean being the loudest person in the room. It means being the most patient." A hush settled over the gym. She continued, "There are students in this building who have been laughed at, followed, filmed without permission, and humiliated, all while the adults around them looked away." Parents shifted in their seats. A few teachers looked visibly uncomfortable. "I didn't step in with fists or noise," Aria said. "I stepped in with the truth, and that's sometimes louder than anything else." Before anyone could respond, the overhead projector, silent until now, flickered to life. A video clip began to play. Laughter, grainy cell phone footage, Landon's voice, a montage of clips, students being mocked in the hallway, private moments turned into memes, cruel voiceovers layered on top of stolen footage. In every scene, Landon's face appeared, sometimes blurry, sometimes clear, always behind the camera, always in control, until now. A stunned silence filled the auditorium. One mother gasped audibly. A boy sitting near the front bowed his head and covered his face with both hands. Landon Pierce sat in the fourth row, frozen. The smirk that had once lived permanently on his face was gone. His jaw tightened. His hands curled into fists on his knees, knuckles white. Principal Graves leaned toward a school administrator and whispered something urgent. The video ended. The screen went dark. And for a long, breathless moment, no one moved. Then Aria spoke once more, her voice soft but resolute. Silence doesn't protect anyone. It only protects the person causing the harm. She stepped away from the podium. As she returned to her seat, the room remained quiet. No clapping, no noise. Just the heavy hum of reckoning settling over every adult and student present. Graves returned to the microphone. He looked older than he had 5 minutes earlier. We will be addressing this matter immediately, he said, adjusting his tie. Effective as of today, Landon Pierce is suspended pending further investigation. A rustle of movement. Landon stood up too quickly. His chair clattered behind him. Every eye turned toward him as he stormed out of the gym. Cheeks burning, shoulders stiff. No one followed. Aria didn't look at him. She didn't need to. She had said what needed saying. She had shown what needed showing. And now the people who had laughed were looking at each other differently. The kids who once avoided her gaze were now looking toward her with something else in their eyes. Not fear. Respect. Because in a world that often rewards volume and bravado, Aria Blake had chosen truth, strategy, and silence. And somehow that made more noise than Landon Pierce ever had. The hallway outside the gym was empty, hushed, as if the building itself had gone still to listen. The echoes of the student assembly still lingered in the air. The gasps, the silence, the uneasy shuffle of feet as Landon Pierce's world unraveled in front of an entire school. Aria had stepped outside for a moment, leaning against a cold brick pillar near the courtyard. The autumn air carried a hint of damp earth and dry leaves, soft against her skin. She didn't fidget. She didn't pace. She just waited. She knew he'd come. And he did. Landon's footsteps broke the silence first. Heavy, uneven, coming fast. When he turned the corner and spotted her, there was no crowd behind him. No audience. No group of laughing teammates at his back. Just him. His face was flushed, eyes sharp, lips twisted in a fury he didn't know how to contain. His fists were clenched, but trembling. Not with strength, but with the wild chaos of a boy who'd finally lost control. "You ruined my life," he shouted, his voice echoing through the empty corridor. "You stood up there and destroyed me like it was nothing." Aria didn't move. She looked at him, not with pity, not with triumph, just clarity. "No," she said, voice calm as steady water. "You destroyed yourself." Landon took a step closer. "I was just messing around. You think I'm the only one who does that stuff? You think no one else jokes, teases?" "You weren't joking," she interrupted, her words quiet but firm. "You were humiliating people. You were hurting them. And you did it because you thought no one would ever stop you." His jaw clenched. "You don't get it," he snapped. "You made me look like a monster." Aria blinked. "You did that all by yourself. I just showed people who you really were." That hit him harder than a punch. He looked away, jaw working like he was chewing on every bitter truth he'd been avoiding for years. "You think you're better than me?" he said finally, voice lower now, almost wounded. "You walk around all quiet, acting like you're above everyone." "I never said I was better," Aria replied. "I just refused to be smaller." That stopped him. She took a step forward, closing the gap, not in aggression, but in gravity. "You don't scare me, Landon," she said, her voice soft but certain. "Not because I have power, but because you've spent your whole life needing people to fear you, just to feel like you matter. Landon's shoulders dropped slightly, the fight bleeding out of him inch by inch. And now, Aria added, you don't know who you are without that. He didn't respond. For the first time, he had nothing to throw back. Just silence. He turned, then paused. Without looking at her, he muttered, "You think this is over?" Aria didn't flinch. "For me," she said, "it already is." And with that, she turned her back to him. Not out of disrespect, but resolution. Because the battle wasn't hers anymore. It was his. A month later, the banners in the Crestwood gym had changed. This time, they weren't gold and navy for school spirit. They were white, trimmed in silver and deep blue. At the center of the stage stood a podium bearing the seal of the National Youth Advocacy Council, a symbol of a new beginning, not just for the school, but for something bigger. The audience was different too. Teachers, parents, students from other districts, representatives from the Department of Education, even a few journalists in the back with notepads resting on their knees. And there, calm, poised, and entirely in her element, stood Aria Blake. No longer the girl hiding behind a recorder. No longer the quiet mystery in the lunchroom. She was now the National Student Ambassador for the No Silence Initiative, a program designed to combat bullying, digital harassment, and institutional silence across America's schools. She hadn't asked for the spotlight, but when it came, she didn't run from it either. At the edge of the room, standing quietly near the exit, was General Serena Blake. Her arms were crossed, her expression unreadable, but her eyes, sharp and steady, never left her daughter. She said nothing. She didn't have to, because this moment didn't belong to her. It belonged to Aria. The room stilled as Aria stepped to the microphone. She took a breath, then began. "When I first came to Crestwood," she said, her voice clear, "I didn't want to be noticed. I wanted to disappear. I thought if I stayed quiet, trouble wouldn't find me." A pause. But trouble doesn't care how quiet you are, and silence doesn't protect the people it should. It just hides the ones doing harm. A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. "I didn't fight back with my fists. I didn't scream. I didn't need to. Because the truth, when you let it speak, is louder than any bully's voice." She glanced toward the back of the gym, not looking for her mother, but knowing she was there. "I was lucky to have someone behind me. But what I've learned is that courage doesn't come from who stands behind you. It comes from who you choose to be when no one's watching." She smiled gently. "So today, I'm not here because I was brave. I'm here because I refuse to stay silent." She rested her hand on the podium. "And to every student out there who's ever been laughed at, left out, or pushed aside, you don't need to fight harder. You just need to speak. The truth will do the rest." Applause swelled through the room, and at the back, Serena finally smiled, because the world had just met the version of Aria she always knew was there. Not loud, not angry, just unshakably true. And that, in the end, was more powerful than anything. Sometimes the quietest voices carry the loudest truth. Aria Blake's story reminds us that strength doesn't always wear a uniform or raise its voice. Sometimes it looks like a 14-year-old girl who refuses to let cruelty define her, who chooses patience over panic and truth over revenge. In a world where shouting often drowns out listening, Aria teaches us the value of calm conviction. She never threw a punch. She never made threats. Instead, she observed, gathered facts, and acted with quiet precision. Not for glory, but for justice. That's a lesson many of us, especially those of us who've lived through decades of change, can appreciate deeply. We know that power built on fear never lasts, and we've seen firsthand how real courage often means standing alone, not because you're fearless, but because you won't back down from what's right. Aria's journey also reminds us of the role we play in protecting the vulnerable, whether we're parents, grandparents, educators, or neighbors. Silence may feel like safety, but it can also become complicity. When we speak out, when we support those who can't yet speak for themselves, we shift the balance, just as Aria did. And perhaps most beautifully, this story reminds us that behind every brave young person is often someone who believed in them quietly, steadfastly. Like Aria's mother, General Serena. Many of you watching this may recognize yourself in her, the steady hand behind a strong child. And for that, you deserve your own recognition too. So if this story moved you, if it reminded you of something you've faced or someone you've raised, please consider taking a moment to like this video, leave a comment sharing your thoughts or memories, and subscribe to my channel for more heartfelt, true-to-life stories like this one. And don't forget to click the notification bell so you won't miss what comes next, because there's always another story waiting to be told. And sometimes the quietest ones are the most powerful of all.